What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today I've got for you 4 revenge stories, starting with this one from NuclearRevenge, which is absolutely insane and, to be honest, pretty heartbreaking. Make sure to stay tuned after the first one though, because there are 3 more crazy revenge stories to come. Look out for the second one in particular. It's long, but so good. Without further ado, make sure you're subscribed to the channel for more content like this. Let's get into the first of 4 nuclear revenge stories. You want to hit a disabled person? Have fun with 30 plus years in jail. This happened in January, but the district attorney called me 2 days ago with the update. I am a wheelchair user because of a fainting disorder, severe POTS for those wondering. Now, POTS stands for postural tachycardia syndrome, when your heart rate increases very quickly after getting up from sitting or lying down, often making you feel dizzy or lightheaded. Okay, I didn't know that. There's currently actually no cure as well. Well, firstly, OP, I'm very sorry that you suffer from that. Anyway, let's get back into the story. I came home from work to see a car parked right under a no parking fire lane and on the sidewalk. It blocked the way into my apartment and I had to leave the wheelchair in my car. I started taking photos of the car because this had been an issue with the owner for months. My landlord had told me to get photos of it and email them to him every time she did it after I mentioned it in passing. While taking a photo, the owner came out of her apartment to scream at me. I stayed calm and I tried to walk into my apartment. She got in my face to continue screaming, and by reflex, I just shoved her back. She then grabbed me by the throat and began to punch me. After a minute, my neighbors and roommate, who were having a smoke, came running and got her off of me. Police were called. Paramedics showed up because my neck was bleeding, she had acrylic nails, and I ended up going to the ER because I had a syncope episode while the paramedics were there. Now again, a syncope is another word for fainting or passing out. I wasn't sure about that, but there we go. Someone is considered to have syncope if they become unconscious and go limp, then soon recover. I decided to press charges, thinking I'd just get an aggravated assault or something. I made sure that they got her while she was home because I knew she had a gun on the wall despite being a convicted felon. When the police went to arrest her, they found that the car was stolen without insurance, she didn't have a license, there were used needles all over the apartment with her 8-year-old child, and the gun was also marked stolen. The child is in foster care and she is now in jail without bond. The DA said that her child recorded it. She apparently told her to, and it was already ruled as an assault because of the overwhelming proof, plus the 7 counts of assault she's gotten in the past 5 years already. Oh my goodness. Had I gotten her nailed with it outside her home, she would have only gotten probation, since she was a parent. But now she's lost her kid, her home, her car, and she's going to be in jail for about 30 years or more, depending on what the state charges her with for the drugs. Wow. I mean, wow. Just coming out of your house and grabbing someone by the throat and punching them in the face. What sort of person does that? It's just insane. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, if this revenge is nuclear. I think it's more just like the justice that this woman deserved. Like, yeah, 30 years is a lot, but that's the way she's lived her life. She's done so many illegal things that she deserves 30 years. Like, I think nuclear would be if you had grabbed her by the throat and then just killed her. That probably would be more nuclear. But yeah, being realistic, I think that this is completely legitimate, and, you know, the law has said she deserves to go to jail for 30 years or more. That's not nuclear, that's just justice. I'm not sure what the damage was to you in the end. You didn't actually say how badly you were damaged. I mean, you went to the ER, but were you there for a while or not? I'm not sure. I mean, your neck was bleeding, that's never good. But it sounds to me as if you did society a favor by taking this hit. Yeah, it wasn't a good thing for you. And whether or not you stayed in the ER for a long time or not, it's terrible. However, getting this woman off the streets, out of society and into jail for that length of time is a great thing. You had to sacrifice your neck, but it was worth it. Wow. What a terrible, terrible woman. Let's move on to the second story. Now moving on to our next revenge story. I got poisoned by my old job. I called in my dad, outed them for illegal practices, caused my 2 brothers that worked with me to quit with me, and plunged their store down their ranking lists. Now I warn everyone not to buy anything from there. This is going to be a long one, so settle down friends as I tell you the horrors of this danged store. So, I, a 21-year-old man, used to work at a particular chain of southern grocery stores that sounds like the word Pringles. I worked at their stores from age 18 to 21, and I only quit last year. I'm turning 22 in July. So yeah, these stores were the only places I ever worked. I don't want to get into all the nasty details, or we'd be here for years, but this corporation is so messed up and corrupt. They did everything from shuffling around sexual offenders from store to store to firing people based off of race and religion. I myself got harassed a ton by another worker and several recurring customers, and nothing was ever done about it. But that's a different story. Now, on to why I quit from the first store. At this time, I was freshly 19. I was the main cook at the Asian food station at the deli, on top of manning several other stations. I was kneeling down to get the sauces from a low fridge when I breathed in, and I felt something hit me in the back of the brain. I was thrown off for a second, but I figured I was fine. They had an outside contractor in our area doing some work, so I just assumed that I caught a whiff of a cleaner that he was working with. I picked up the wok of orange chicken I'd been making, and I brought it up to the serving station and put it up, when one of the servers, a very sweet elderly woman, asked if I was okay, looking very concerned. I still felt fine at the moment, so I said yes, but that was it, for the moment. I immediately felt the worst brain haze I'd ever felt. My feet went out from under me and my vision went completely blurry. I stumbled backwards and I was able to catch myself on the counter behind me. Later on, the server told me she asked if I was okay because I hadn't only just lost all my colour, I'd gone grey. It felt like all my balance was gone. I worked with two of my brothers at the same location and one of them came running to help me stand. I had vague memories of my brother helping me walk to the indoor cafe, but my head was literally lulling in circles. I couldn't keep it upright. I think I almost fell on one of the managers from the front of the store. My brother made me sit down at a table and got me a cup of water. That's when I realised I was crying. My heart was pounding so hard, my entire front of my uniform was moving with it. Whatever my body was reacting to was so bad, it was overwhelming it. I felt like I couldn't move. I was just sunk into the chair, crying. I tried to pick up the cup, and my brother had to come back to help me take a drink. At this point, I was panicking. A fact about the kitchen that I, as the head chef, was painfully aware of, we had a gas-run pizza oven, a really old gas-run oven. A gas-run oven that you had to kick to get all 4 burners to get on. I'll tell you now though, that wasn't a gas leak, but that's where my brain immediately went to, especially since they refused to do maintenance on that oven, or the gas-run open flame woks, one machine away from said oven. This whole time I felt like I wanted to throw up, but at the same time I couldn't. The supervisor told my brother he had to stop checking on me and that he'd get in trouble if he kept checking. The supervisor and other members of morning shift, I was a night shifter, my other night shifters know how it is, well, they were treating me like I was exaggerating. One of them came over, one of whom I particularly hated because she looked down on everyone, and started baby talking about how some people are just weaker than others. This whole time I was panicking and telling her I wasn't exaggerating, and everyone else needed to leave the deli until we figured out what it was. And it was affecting me so badly, it had been an hour and my body was still panicking. It was bad. She, though, just brushed me aside and left again. That's when I realised they weren't going to investigate what happened to me at all. And they were going to keep everyone, including my 2 brothers, working in the same area I just got affected in. That's when our absolute hero shows up. The nearby McDonald's manager. A sick dude around the same age as me that regularly got food at the deli. I'd served him a few times. He'd been sitting in the cafe on his lunch break from his job when he saw me. He immediately came over and asked what was wrong, as we were on bro terms. I gave him a breakdown on what was going on and he went over to check it out. He came back and said that he didn't smell a gas leak, but I was definitely displaying concerning signs. So, without linking himself to me, he went up to the front of the store and basically demanded they do something about it. However, the front management realised it must have been me, so their solution, not to find out what did this to me, to take me from the cafe, drag me up to the management office and sit me in a swivel chair so they could keep an eye on me. That's right, they sat a dude that couldn't balance on his own in a swivel chair next to a desk corner. They proceeded to completely ignore me and not let my brothers come into the office to talk to me, and I was still panicking about the fact that the other workers could breathe in whatever I had done. I was finally able to coordinate enough to pull my phone out of my apron pocket and text my dad. I texted him a very short list of PowerPoints of what happened, and he asked a few questions about why my management was acting like they were, which all I could say was, I don't know. Now, this wasn't my proudest moment. A 19-year-old guy who'd been crying for over an hour and couldn't stop, texting his dad, I don't know what's happening, Dad, but I'm scared and I need you. You know what, bro? I've got to interject here and say respect for sending that message. That just shows that you're not too proud. I mean, people that are too proud wouldn't send that message. People that, have too much of an ego, even when they clearly need as much help as they can. I mean, who knows at this point? You might have been dying. I mean, we'll get on to more of the story in a second, but you've got to send these messages and not let your pride get in the way. So yeah, you shouldn't say that you're not proud. You should actually say that you're proud of not being too proud to send a message like that, if that makes sense. Anyway, let's get back into it. My dad told me he was on his way and to clock out. I told the managers my dad was coming and I needed to clock out. At this point, they were acting annoyed with me, especially the store owner. I could talk for days about how terrible the store managers were, so they were glad I was leaving. They offered to help me walk to the time clock. I should have taken their offer, but I was so angry and disappointed I refused, and I just held onto the front desk and shelving as I got to the clock out room. I clocked out and I stumbled my way back to the area I worked at to get my stuff. I had to bring my own supplies to work because they never gave us new equipment, so I had a whole backpack I needed to grab. My brothers immediately tried to run over to me when they saw me, but the manager blocked them and told them to keep working. How toxic is that? Before I could get my backpack, my manager, a woman that I'd been working under since I was 18 and frankly scared me, blocked me from going into the back room to get my bag and started demanding answers from me. Once again, this is not a proud moment. I have a medical condition that made me stop growing at 14, so I'm pretty easily intimidated. She was taller and stronger than me, and I still felt completely vulnerable. All of my senses were still shot, and my body was still in panic mode. I tried to answer her questions, but I was just mumbling and stumbling over my own words. That's when I saw him. My dad. My dad is a 5'6" man who worked as a jack-of-all-tradesman for most of my childhood. I'm talking plumber, electrician, groundskeeper, roofer, builder. At this time, he was working as a contractor, so he quite literally was building and modifying higher class houses in the mountains. He came storming in his contracting gear with a bandana wrapped around his head. That is when I knew I was going to be okay. My brothers talked about it later, but if anyone knew anything about my dad, if he had that bandana on, he was going after someone, and they were royally screwed. He walked up and immediately crossed his arms, demanding to know what happened to his kid. Once again, not a proud moment, but I moved to hide behind him. My manager was caught off guard for a moment, but recovered and started telling my dad that I'd just overreacted to a cleaner the contractor was using. At that time, I'd figured it must have been something that the contractor was using, but I didn't know for sure, so the fact they knew what had done this to me and didn't feel the need to tell me made me mad, but it annoyed my dad so much. He demanded to talk to the contractor. If you've ever heard a 49-year-old man get mad, you can imagine the tension in his voice. He didn't yell. He never yells, but when he gets serious, the tension in his voice is genuinely terrifying. The contractor they hired came over. That's when my dad's expertise clicked in. My dad, the contractor. In other words, the guy that knew all the local laws around contracted labour. He asked all the right questions. He demanded to see what the contractor had been spraying around the kitchen that day. When they handed him the can, he tore the contractor a new one. So the kitchen I work in is blocked from the rest of the deli area by a counter. A counter has about an inch of space under it for cleaning purposes. So when I leaned down, this spray had shot under the counter and directly into my face. And what was that spray? An industrial grade degreaser. It was so strong it was meant to be used in empty factories by someone in a full respirator mask. It wasn't supposed to be sprayed around people, and especially not right in someone's face. My dad immediately pointed this out and demanded to see the contractor's safety sheet on the chemical. something that all contractors in our area are required to carry on every chemical they use to show they know how to safely use it. The contractor said he had it in his van. He did not. The man was using one of the strongest factory-grade degreasers on the market, and he didn't know how to use it. He was wearing a mask while using it, sure, but not a respirator. It was just a plain white dust cover. My dad lost his mind and sent me past my manager to get my bag while he tore them apart. Oh, and the illegal part? Well, the company wasn't supposed to hire outside contractors for this exact reason, but my manager did so that the work wouldn't be filed, so it would seem like our store didn't take any company resources for repair jobs. Anyway, my dad took me home and my siblings came back too. My dad went onto his PC and looked at the full information page on the degreaser. I was in the second stage of serious poisoning. It wouldn't kill me, thankfully, but it wasn't fun. At this point, I had a little bit of my balance back, but I was still panicking and confused. I was able to draft up a text, ripping them a new one, and quitting. I had a pounding headache, and I ended up throwing up 3 times before I fell asleep that night. I woke up the next day unemployed, but a lot happier. I had a headache for several days. I ended up working for the company again for around a year in the future, but that's a different story. Now, every time I get the chance, I out all the garbage I can on this dumpster fire of a trash company. And let me tell you just a few bullet points of dirt I have on them, just for a little more revenge. They wanted me to serve frozen soup that expired in 2018 in 2021. They marked rotisserie chicken that wasn't organic as organic and sold it at a marked up price. They wanted us to cook chicken that went green. They reused expired meat from the meat counter in the ready serve food. They called people slurs outright, okay, as if all the disgusting food stuff wasn't bad enough. They're just calling people slurs. Great. They used outside contractors with no safety standards. The managers shuffle around offenders from store to store and hire offenders that the employees ask them to ban from the store. They purposely marked up prices during times of need, hurricanes, droughts, etc. They have entire teams whose only job is to take down posts about them online because they're that terrible. They called the police on a homeless man trying to stay in the warm during a below freezing day. He wasn't bothering a soul. They didn't update the equipment, leading to several injuries. 2 of my co-workers lost large parts of their fingers. They delayed training until the last moments, leading to my training being 167 days overdue when I did it. They didn't fire an employee that slashed 2 other employees' tires and was known as a stalker. She followed someone all the way to their house. And finally, they had a food safety grade A sign up from 2019, but their current grade was barely above a C, technically a B. And so many freaking more. But this is part of my revenge. If you're in the South and see one of these dang stores, just don't go. Go into Publix. They're better. They treat their employees better. And honestly, I've never met an ex-employee from Pringles that doesn't want the entire corporation to fail and be gone. Anyways, that's the story of what happened and my never-ending revenge. I will never stop outing them for the trash corporation they are, and neither will my family. I sincerely hope I live to see that company gone. Revenge forever. Sincerely, a man that hates that corporation with his entire being. Wow, there we go. Great story. Yeah, it was a long one, but I love the long ones. A lot of context in there. The story was great. And I think the first thing I need to do, and I don't live in America, so I've actually never heard of this store, but just looking through the comments, and I'm allowed to say this because I'm not the one that's accusing this store of doing anything in particular or, having these sort of practices where they let their staff just call people slurs or whatever to one another or employ offenders, etc. But it looks to me like the name of the store is called Ingles. I've not heard of it. Those of you in America, let me know if I'm right or not. But yeah, apparently it's a pretty small chain, only a little over 200 locations. But I can say this: avoid it. I'm not in danger of anyone saying to me that I've made some defamatory remarks or anything that's too incriminating. But just from what I'm seeing here, avoid this store like the plague. Let me make sure it's called Ingles. Yeah, I'm not going to be sued for that. But there we go. That is the name of the store, apparently. Now, one thing that I have to say is, why OP did you not go to hospital throughout all of this? Like, it doesn't matter what your manager or your the other staff are saying to you. You could have been dying. I mean, I don't know what was. You must have had no idea what was going on. Surely someone should have said, like, go to hospital. Like the fact that the staff were stopping your brothers from seeing you. If I'm your brothers, I don't care. I'm getting in there. I'm saying, no, we're going to hospital right now. That's the only thing I don't really understand about this story. But overall, yeah, great stuff. And you're right. If telling your story online, even me like narrating it now, giving my thoughts on it, and you guys all listening and watching to this helps people not go to Ingalls anymore, I think it's worth it. Hopefully I can't get sued for this, but I don't mind saying what I've just said based on what I've just read. Okay, now for our third revenge story. Revenge on my former neighbor who vandalized my vehicle. This happened about 15 years ago. My wife and I purchased a home deep in the country in an effort to simplify our lives. We quickly met our neighbors and everything seemed good. A year or so after we moved into the home, my wife got pregnant with our first child. I traveled periodically for work at the time and I was out of town. My wife was wanting to take a relaxing soak in the tub as her feet had swollen due to the pregnancy. As she was trying to relax, the neighbor's dog was barking incessantly. The dog was a large breed and had a big bark. This went on and on for 30 minutes or so. My wife had a pregnancy psycho moment and got out of the tub, put on her bathrobe, and screamed out the door at the neighbor to shut their barking dog up. Well, here is where the story gets pretty fun. The neighbor went full-on redneck on us. They renamed their Wi-Fi SSID to, quote, I love barking dogs. We would find random things vandalized on our property. One day I came home from work to see my wife picking stuff up from the driveway. Well, it turns out that this redneck had thrown some poorly made nail devices in our driveway in an attempt to puncture my truck's tires. The next event was truly diabolical. I left for work the next morning, and by the time I got to the interstate, my brakes felt sort of squishy. I pulled into a truck stop to inspect the truck. The petcock valve on my front right brake caliper had been loosened, and my brake fluid had mostly drained out. This guy tried to kill me. I went postal, but with insidious methods. I work in the IT field, so technology is my thing. I had an old laptop that I installed an OS on that is used for security penetration testing, and I cracked their Wi-Fi. I printed interesting things on their printer, including a convincing email from another woman to the husband. I printed prawn photos. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall when the cow found that. I discovered that I could go online and sign up for a prison romance pen pal. I signed his wife up and wrote a letter that was supposedly from her. I gave their address and I told the inmate enough about their life, how long they'd been married, what the hubby did for a living, how many kids, dogs, etc. they had, stuff like that, to make it convincing. I expect that her husband had a few words for her after that. I've never told this story before, and I hope it brings someone else even a little bit of joy. That was a funny one. Now, importantly, guys, some of you might be wondering, like me, okay, that's great and all, but did anything actually happen? As in, what were the repercussions? Because this guy has tried to kill you and you haven't gone to the police. So somebody actually asked OP in the comments, okay, but did this actually achieve anything? And OP said, we moved shortly after. I heard they got divorced a couple of years later. So there we go. Sounds like this did have the desired effect. But yeah, crazy, crazy neighbors. This is my fear. I'm actually trying to get a place at the moment, right? And I'm slightly concerned because how do you ever know what your neighbors are going to be like? If you've got people like this next to you, this makes such a difference compared to having, just normal neighbors. You can have the nicest house in the world, be in the nicest place in the world. But if your neighbors are going to be like this and try and kill you, none of that really matters. So maybe I'm thinking of the worst here, but yeah, I wouldn't want to have neighbors like this, that's for sure. However, I suppose if I do, then I'll have some great stories to tell. Now for the final story of this episode. Sent flowers to a, quote, dead ex. I am an 18-year-old guy, and I had an ex who was an 18-year-old girl who I haven't talked to in months. Fast forward to last week, I was talking to a group of friends and her name came up in conversation from a friend of a friend. This friend thought that her and I were still together, and when I explained that we weren't, we continued the conversation about it, and it got me thinking how she's been. Mind you, she went ghost and like really made me hurt, but because I'm a very apologetic person, I didn't let it bother me. After the conversation though, I thought I'd reach out and just see how she's doing. So I text her friend, because she's got me blocked, just to see how she's doing. And her friend was all cool about it and the whole thing seemed fine. Until my ex texted my friend, acting like her sister, saying she had died. Little did she know, I remember when she pulled the same stunt with their ex before me. So, the revenge. Me and a group of friends made the 51-minute drive to her house to pay our respects. What we did was we went to a gas station and bought all of their flowers, put them in a basket, and put a card in it marked with our deepest condolences. The card was filled with some of the finest glitter we could find at the dollar store, and off we went to deliver everything. When we get to her house, I told my friends to stay back while I went up and knocked on the door. I set the flowers down on the porch and I walked away. As I'm walking away, however, her dad answered the door and went, "Can I help you?" To which I replied, "I'm sorry for your loss. Her name meant so much to me and it's sad to see her go." In confusion, her dad responded, "She's not dead." As me and the boys leave, her and her friends show up in her car. Then she looks at me and my friends and says, "What are you doing here?" "Well, I thought you died," I replied. Her dad was furious and essentially took all of her freedoms away until summer and actually gave me and my friends each $20 for the inconvenience and gas money. Okay, honestly, who does that? Like, who jokes about their own death like that? Unless you're like 12 and you just have no common sense. But like, ghosting is one thing. Joking about your own death or faking your own death is so dumb. Also, it's so obvious that you're not dead. Like, it's not that hard for someone to work out, oh, are you dead or alive? Like, you don't even have to go to their house. Just go on the internet. It really can't be that hard to know. Also, like, word of mouth. Imagine being her dad. He's probably just like, what are you doing? Like, he's probably sick of her doing this sort of stuff. Probably knows that she's done it before. And that's the reason why he's actually like furious and is like, you know what, guys, thanks for telling me because this is ridiculous. I'm going to give you all some money because of the inconvenience. And she's not doing anything this summer. Like, it's actually insane. The dad's probably a nice guy. The daughter, Jesus, horrible. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this one. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know in the comments down below which story you enjoyed the most. 1, 2, 3, or 4. They were all slightly different. 1, probably the most shocking. 2, the longest, the most detailed. 3, probably the most funny overall. And 4, the most weird. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below which one you enjoyed. I will catch you guys on the next one. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you aren't already. And if you want more right away, check out this episode on screen.